To kick things off, Ryan, do you want to just give everyone on the line a little bit of context about who you are, your background, States Logistics, what your operations look like?
Thanks, Evan. Thanks for having me on too. Appreciate it. States Logistics is a privately held third-party logistics organization. We offer warehousing, transportation, and packaging value-added services. On the warehousing side, we have 14 warehouses, a little over 5 million square feet. Majority of our space is ambient space, but we have 3 facilities with some temperature control at 65 degrees. Our transportation solutions, we have an asset-based transportation solution, does drayage from the Port of LA, Long Beach. We do truckload services in and out of our facilities. We do LTL and LTL consolidation. And then we've got our brokerage transportation management piece that handles transportation throughout the United States, Canada, and a little bit of Mexico. And our packaging value-added services, those are typically inside our warehouse operations, and we're doing variety packs, kitting, display packs for customers, printed registered film over some quality control operations, just about anything a customer could need to reconfigure their product. And that pretty much covers us in the short form.
Got it. Thanks, Ryan. Nick, do you want to give the elevator pitch on who Nick is and what your background is, what you bring to the table?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Nick Palzinski, and I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships here at OneTrack. I got into the computer vision space a long time ago, actually working in agriculture, and throughout the life cycle have found my place at OneTrack and have been with our organization for about 3 years now. I want to share a little bit about what we do and how we do it. OneTrack is a warehouse operating system enabling visibility across an entire network. They're in hundreds of warehouses across North America. We have thousands of sensors that are deployed, and we are delivering visibility in real time to help our customers make faster, better, more accurate decisions. We are sending alerts to supervisors, to the important leadership members of the team in a particular facility. We're giving them the ability to take immediate action when something occurs, and then giving them the tools that they need to analyze the data that is coming out of their specific locations all the way across their network from a complete perspective. As we look at the OneTrack sensor, this simple device can be deployed in a number of different applications across all different types of equipment. It effortlessly scales to meet the needs of our customers. So as we'll see here in a second, it can be deployed in a variety of places, and it can be connected right out of the gates, connected via cellular and added to Wi-Fi if the customer so chooses, and something that we can facilitate based on the requirements the customer has. And as we talk about the unique aspects of this being deployed, one specific area that I'm sure we'll talk about later on is the forward-facing cameras. So, Ryan, as we're talking through the importance of the service to your customers, it's something that we hear quite often around the ability to be able to monitor loads and the quality of the product as it exits the building. So certainly a lot more to share, and excited to be a part of the call today.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Nick. And now that introductions are out of the way, we can really get to the fun part of this conversation, which is digging into what is world-class operations, how the industry is changing, and hear some real stories, how you're building world-class operations, what you're hearing from other leaders every day. So with that, Ryan, States runs the gambit of logistics operations as a 3PL. So how have you seen the industry change over your time in logistics, whether it's the last 5 years, 10 years?
Yeah, well, I've been doing this for roughly about 35 years. Our company's been around for 65. Our principles and the definition of what's important to us hasn't changed for all of my time, and probably since our company started out. We're still focused on driving service, performance to our customers. Kind of starting to laugh because I think about back when I started 35 years and my mentors teaching me when I didn't know anything. But we talked about moving boxes through the warehouse, loading trucks, unloading trucks. The way they put it, they're picking cases, loading trucks uphill both ways through the snow. None of that's changed. We're doing all the same thing. The difference, I think, today, technology has changed, and the speed, demand, the expectations, speed of execution, the speed of communication, the levels of accuracy, the increased performance. My first day, I learned what a bulk chart was. Maybe this is really aging me, but we had blue and green bar paper. Printers in the office would print out these 3 and 4 inch thick bulk charts. It had the item, SKU information, where the location in the warehouse was, and you use this to go find product out in the warehouse and figure out what you were picking. And that was updated every few days. And at the end of the month, you updated the customer and you made sure that your inventory is matched and everything's right. Well, that would get laughed out of our environment today. I mean, everything's real time. The inventory is matched every second. They want to know when an order is being picked, know when the order is shipped out the door. They want to know when the order is in transit, when the order is received. Amazon started to get a picture that the product's sitting on your doorstep and you know it's been delivered. And so the speed of which stuff is happening and the way that information has to flow and how fast it has to go is really changed our environment. I love sports. Mickey Mantle was hitting way back in his day, and then you had Barry Bonds, and that's what technology has done to our industry. It's the steroids era. Everything is so much more intense, and now we have Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani, and things are just so much more intense and so much faster, and I find it a lot more exciting too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you brought up expectations. And Nick, I think you sit in a really interesting spot because you talk to both 3PL leaders as well as on the shipper, manufacturer, brand side of things every single day. So how do you think that relationship has changed over the years as technology's progressed? And what are some of those expectations that you're hearing on both sides?
Yeah, it is a really interesting discussion when we're talking to these leaders of Fortune 100 companies to a mom and pop organization. I think the overarching theme that tends to come up in all of our discussions is that the way warehouses are run today is perfectly suited for a world that no longer exists. And what I mean by that, everything is advancing so quickly. And it's really interesting, these discussions that we're getting into around the shippers' expectations of 3PLs and vice versa. We're hearing shippers wanting more visibility, and we're also hearing 3PLs wanting to enable visibility to their shipping partners through the new tools that enable, Ryan, exactly what you talked about, that real-time visibility, not just for within your own organization, but for your customer network as well. And I think that's really an exciting aspect to be in as we look at the tools that are enabling it. And we're living through what will be another major shift for a very important industry in our country and globally.
So you said you like sports analogies there, Ryan. So when you hear world-class operations, what does that mean to you or mean to states?
Well, you're the best at what you do. The Florida Panthers of the supply chain, right? You got to be great in all areas of your operations and everything you do, and it's got to be consistent. Like, you can't be great just today. You got to be great over time, years of consistent long-term performance. That's my definition.
I'd echo what Ryan is saying. It's being the best. And to continue with the sports analogies, it's the motto of play like a champion every single day. And that starts when you're thinking about the leaders of your organization, all the way down to the person that's driving the forklift or doing the case picks or individual packing for specific customer requests. So it really is all encompassing, because every step of the way, everybody's very, very important and influential in the ultimate outcome of what your customers experience, what shippers experience, what the third party logistics organizations experience. So I think it plays all the way through, from soup to nuts, if you will.
Yeah, I always think of it in terms of this idea of the golden triangle. You have people, you have processes and technology, and they all have to be perfectly aligned to achieve that world-class vision. Your people have to be firing on all cylinders. Your processes have to be well-defined. You have to have technology that enables all of those things. We named this episode after a golden triangle of your own with states: safety, service, profit. Ryan, do you want to walk us through that mantra and how that guides your vision every day for states?
Sure, I'd love to. We have, three pillars that we're defining and measuring our success, and they're in order of importance. And number one is safety. We need to make sure every associate goes home at the end of their shift safe and sound. We can never sacrifice on safety. We don't want to sacrifice for speed. It's got to be safe all the time. And so that's our number one. Second is service. We're a third-party provider. We provide warehousing, transportation, value-added services, packaging. We don't own any of the goods. We don't own the products. We're not designing and creating the products. We're providing space and moving that product through the supply chain. And we got to be excellent at service. We got to be perfect performers. And then the final leg, we call it financial value, profit. Profit sometimes is looked a little bit negatively, but that's across all partners. And we need to have financial success for our company and our organization. so that we can keep investing and keep growing and do well. Our associates need to be fairly compensated so that they can enjoy their work here and they can keep creating the value that they create and doing what they do. And then it's got to have value for our customers. Our customers need to be profitable too, and we need to be efficient and effective at what we do so that they can have profit on their side. But how do we create that? We measure people. Our original founder talked about, our organization, people were the most important thing we have. They drive our organization. All of us, my 1,000 competitors, we can all get the same buildings. We can get the same forklifts, the same systems, similar technology, but the people, they're going to drive the use of all that stuff and make us successful. We want to make sure we set up the right structures and processes. Starts with hiring and training people. The training and development of our people is excellent. We've focused a lot on employee engagement in the last few years and making sure that we're connected with our people. There's trust and that we're doing all the right things for our organization. And then we're focused on what technologies can make all of this stuff happen. And it's everything from a warehouse management system, transportation management system, our employee engagement platform, which is another system, whether it's robotics to unload containers. We have OneTrack that's guiding our safety initiatives. All this technology is used in all different areas, and we're trying to find out how do they fit and how do they guide us. And one of the most exciting ones for us is OneTrack, how it's providing the feedback, the data, the visuals of what's happening in the operations, whether it's aggressive turns, bumps, impacts, phone violations, and all the safety metrics that we generate off of that, which are critical to make sure we hit our number one goal, which is safety.
And I'm curious, you talk about technology being an enabler, but as a leader and as the president of a 3PL, how do you think about when is the right time to bring in technology versus maybe building something in-house or trying to do something manually? And how do you prioritize which problems to solve? I'm sure you have a million things and a million moving parts that you could focus on solving. So how do you figure out what rises to that level of investment for you and for states?
Yeah, well, great question. There's a couple different ways. One overriding principle is we look at what is our core competency and what are we focused on and good at. And AI cameras and that are not us. We're not experts in that. And then you start looking at ROI. That's traditionally almost any investment. You look at ROI, and that's definitely part of first steps. Can we replace any of the things that we're doing now, whether it's robotics or drones or container unloading? Is there some kind of hourly cost savings versus the investment? What's the time of that? What's the productivity improvement? And you do the math. So that's usually the start, but it doesn't end there. There's a lot of other things. When you look at our WMS and our TMS, there's certain requirements you have to have in our industry to just participate. They get a chance to be in the game. The reporting, you need the connectivity on your TMS and your WMS. If you don't have that, you can't participate. So there's a need to invest in some of this just to be here and participate. And then you look at technology and safety. When we look at safety, we say safety is our most important pillar of success. And then you talk about the cataclysmic results. If there's a safety issue and the risks and liability around that, how do you put an ROI around that? It's really tough to do. And so any technology that we can look at that help us avoid or reduce our risks, reduce accidents is something that we want to talk about. We want to look at. One of our managers, he coined this phrase and I absolutely loved it, but he says, I want all of our associates going home at the end of the day the same way they came in, only happier, because at the end of the day, they've had a great shift. They've done their work. They're happy. They get to go home. That's the way it should be. We don't want people going home injured or worse. We're desperately trying to avoid those kind of things.
I think, Ryan, as you mentioned on it, it stood out to me is the need for value. We talked about ROI, and that really can get into that, more financial aspect of things. But in terms of value, when you think about safety can be an incredibly difficult thing to quantify. So I would love to get your perspective on, as you looked at our technology and other technology, how are you working with your team to quantify what the actual numbers might be? And then also what the value is for true behavior change across your organization in your locations that have safety focused technology. How are you tying those things together in your business to better understand the overall sort of return, if you will, including value and the financial side of that together? as you're thinking about new technology?
When it comes to safety, our message has been real clear. I don't need to see this mathematical equation that works out and says, hey, we're going to save X amount of dollars by implementing this. You can't quantify safety. It's that nuclear event that happens that there's no price tag if somebody's life is lost. How can this technology improve what we're doing, keep our people safer, have them perform better, and make their lives better day to day at work? And if that adds value to our people, makes them happy and they want to come to work and work for us. I mean, there's a struggle getting people to want to work at companies these days. So we want to provide that best environment. That best environment includes safety. In fact, in our mind, safety is the number one part of that environment.
Yeah. And the reason why I ask is I talk to people all the time where one organization may have not had a significant safety event, and that could be significant based on whomever is reviewing said event. But from a financial perspective, I've talked to companies that they've had safety events that have completely skewed their numbers. So if you were to just simply try to look at this, like you said, that cataclysmic event where it could be a $5 safety event, or it could be a multiple $1 million safety event, right? And the latter is what you're hoping to eliminate or reduce at all costs, that possible event.
And Nick, you gave us a little high level background on OneTrack earlier, and you mentioned the OneTrack sensors. I think most people really get bogged down on that. Their brain goes to, oh, big brother. So let's just address the elephant in the room. Ryan, what was the approach for you, and whether it's OneTrack or any technology, but what was the approach to get your associates, your supervisors, your site level leadership, all the way to you on board with a new technology, especially one that some people could misconstrue it as maybe privacy concerns or things like that?
Yeah, there's no doubt there was concern with our management team that this is going to be invasive, that they're thinking we're spying on them. You know, they got a camera overhead, the privacy issues. We had Class 8 semi trucks, over the road trucks. We put cameras in those years ago. The same concerns happen. We talked about that with them. Whenever there's over the road accidents, drivers are always blamed, right? It's always the semi truck's fault. He always did it. Well, come to find out, when we put the cameras and we got now visuals of all this, turns out most time it is the driver. These are professionals. They're doing it and they're not at fault, but they're blamed 100% of the time. And so until they have this technology that's showing that they weren't at fault, they just got blamed. So we talked about that. Our drivers said, I don't want to be in a truck without a camera because it's protecting me. And when we started to have those conversations with the warehouse team about how we're looking out for them and we're trying to do what's best for them, we focus on engagement and connecting and the trust that we're trying to build with the team. Those conversations went a long way. They understood that we're working on every avenue possible to make the environment as safe as possible. They liked that idea. We shared that these cameras, there's not somebody sitting in a room watching over them like Big Brother. And relatively quickly, all that stuff kind of went away, and they said, no problem. This sounds good. This is great. I mean, we're running warehouse operations. You have 6,000-pound forklifts moving 4,000-pound loads around a facility. There's a lot of action going on, and a lot of things can go wrong. So everything that we can put in place that helps them, that they were all for, they bought into that.
I was talking to a safety leader who manages multiple sites, and he was saying that there was an incident a few weeks ago that was relatively serious, and typically this associate would have been terminated, just no questions asked. It was the driver's fault. And in this case, they got the notification. They saw exactly what happened. They went to go have a conversation with this person. That person actually ended up falling asleep, which, again, big no-no in a warehouse. I don't think anyone's going to sit here and argue that, but they were able to have a conversation with that person. And turns out that person's wife had gotten laid off. They were working 2 jobs. The warehouse had been working 12-hour shifts for 2 weeks. And lo and behold, this happened. And they were able to take a step back and say, okay, we're going to pull you off the equipment and retrain you, but we're not going to terminate you, right? This saved this person's job. And now they're one of the top performers in the building. They were able to use other data to then allocate labor so they didn't have to pull continuous weeks of 12-hour shifts. And it just turns into this really big positive feedback cycle. And I think once that happens once, what we typically see, and Nick, I think you can speak to this more than I can, it kind of catches on like wildfire. People really enjoy feeling safe and feeling comfortable in their work environment. I think that fosters a really positive culture all around throughout a building.
Yeah. And Ryan, it's something that we hear often. You mentioned about your truck cameras, but with many of our customers, we're now hearing it that their operators are saying the same thing on their forklifts, that, hey, we don't want to be on a piece of equipment without it, because sure, accidents happen, but we like that as an accountability tool for us because when you're in a multi-million square foot building, something may happen and there's nobody around, right? It's the whole adage, does a tree make a sound when it falls in the woods? It's this idea that, hey, there's a lot happening in a facility today. And if we can provide a tool that provides accountability to a group of people that have never had it, that fundamentally changes the discussion from oh, this idea around Big Brother to, no, we want you to be safe and we want you to be able to do your job as effectively as possible. And I think that all starts when we sort of step back, a 30,000-foot view is we encourage all of our customers, and States did a great job of this, as you talk through it, Ryan, but just make sure that the first time your team hears about OneTrack is not when our installers show up to put the cameras on the forklift, because that has a very different feel to, well, what's happening and why are these things coming in versus the conversation and the story that you told of, hey, let's talk through this. Let's make sure the associates understand why we're doing this and the importance behind this. So I think that can't be understated because it's something that every discussion that we have, it always comes up. And whether you think about it or not, the moment you left your house today, you were probably on camera. And if you have a Ring doorbell, you're probably on camera at your own house. So when you tie that all together with the world that we live in today, it changes the discussions. States has done a great job of communicating that with their teams.
Funny, the younger generation, they sort of don't care about cameras, or they love cameras and they're on camera constantly. Some of it's the older generation, a little bit more skeptical or not used to it as much, but I think it's how you talk about it, the purpose of it. Evan, I loved your story. Everybody makes mistakes and you have accidents or you've damaged something, but those are part of learning. Those are part of coaching. And those are instances that you can use to connect with associates and help them get better and help them eliminate or reduce those accidents. Not how can you point blame and get them out the door. It's connection with the employees, having those conversations early, working with these systems to help things improve, not punish.
And I'll add on to the sports analogies that we've been using. I often talk to our customers about every time you're watching an NFL game, the first thing the quarterback does after a 3-and-out or any series, they pick up their tablet and they watch what they've done. And I think that's a perfect way to think about OneTrack because now you can have a more robust discussion. It's not well, you hit another pole or you damaged a thing of product. Well, here are the things that led up to said event occurring. And you can really begin to hone in on the leading indicators that caused that event to occur and train and teach and coach your operators to be better and operate at maximum efficiency for your operations.
OneTrack is definitely not supposed to be a gotcha tool. It's meant to give visibility and data so you can then go make better decisions. So do you have any examples or stories that you're willing to share about how you've used that visibility to, whether it's change behaviors in a building, improve a process? When you're talking to your leadership, what are some of the things you're hearing about how they've used this level of visibility and data to make their jobs and their buildings safer, more productive?
The group wanted to make sure that there's trust between the management group and the associates, that we're doing this for a better environment. So associates understand that we want to keep them safe, that we care deeply about them. We want to address unsafe conditions. And so as you're going through these incidents pop up, we've addressed areas that we had bad lighting in the warehouse. We need to improve the lighting. We do a warehouse layout and things are constantly changing daily, but some of the processes where we're doing unloading, we're staging orders. And they addressed this. Well, this is a bad area. You're constricting the aisles in these areas. This is showing it. You're seeing these issues where forklifts are getting near misses or slight impacts. And here's why it's happened. You've changed the layout. You're changing this. We need to address that. So stuff happens constantly that we look at, and we're being proactive in identifying areas that could be issues. And our associates are bringing them up. And it's great, actually, because you can go back to the footage and look at it and say, hey, we got to stop doing this. This is creating a pinch point that's going to be a problem down the road. So those are a few of the examples. We got a lot of them that happen, but the associates and the management are working together and identifying stuff and training. So it's great.
Yeah, that's great. I think it all comes down to it creates this like positive feedback loop from the bottom up. Like you have that accountability and start to change that culture, and it just becomes this domino effect where people really buy into it. And they feel like their opinion matters, but it's not just their opinion. It's going to be backed by data, which always gives someone some solid ground to stand on. We actually just got this question from the audience, and it was, how did you train your team, and specifically talking about the supervisors and the site level managers, to use the tool and to maybe change their day to day and get used to having to use a new tool to do their job in a way they probably never had to do before?
I got to credit the managers, but I mean, there's a process because it's another avenue that the team leads and the supervisors and the managers have to look and keep track of this. But a lot of that OneTrack helped to educate us and teach us, and another was just having those managers and team leads reviewing the information, going out, identifying what things are happening, and then sitting down and having a safety moment at that time to engage with the employee and talk about what's going on and what we saw and what we can improve on.
Shifting gears here, we always pound this drum of visibility, right? We think no matter what the problem is, you need to be able to see the problem to actually solve that problem. But we ask this question, if you could see everything in your warehouses, what do you think you could achieve? And Nick, when you talk about OneTrack being like a warehouse operating system, I know we've talked a lot about safety here, but what does that mean to you when it comes to visibility in a warehouse?
Yeah, absolutely. So often in these discussions that I'm having with leaders in logistics and warehousing, the question often comes up, and the sort of the answer is, well, we don't have the ability to measure that, right? So as I think about being able to measure something, that then gives you the ability to manage to it. So often there are processes in the environments that our sensors are located in today in warehouses that without being able to measure it, you won't fundamentally know that something is occurring. So we've spent a lot of time on safety improvements, but when you take that next step into productivity and quality, we talked about the forward-facing cameras at the beginning. We have companies that were employing 2, 3 full-time people to take pictures, nose, middle, and tail of trailers, right? To ensure that they were providing their customers with the expectations in the service that round out the pillars of many organizations, but they're wanting to provide that upstanding service for their customers. And that was one aspect of what they were doing. When we bring in a tool that provides visibility across the operations, so that means that moment that product comes into the facility through its life cycle of being stored and as it leaves the facility, having that visibility and being able to show your customers that, hey, not only have we done this as efficiently as possible, because through the tools that we use, we've been able to iron out some of our processes that may have had downtime or slow down our operations. But now we're also providing, hey, this is the actual result of what has come out of this tool. So the product left our facility in a great condition, and thus we're expecting it to show up to you in a great condition. One particular story that stands out to me from a real life example was we have a customer that does a lot of business in India. And so oftentimes they talk about the challenges that they had with international freight and containers coming up short when they arrive. And so once they implemented these forward-facing cameras, they've seen their short ships or missed shipments virtually eliminated as you consider the international side of things, because now they have the information and the data to actually prove that, okay, these 20 pallets were loaded and these 20 pallets left the building. So I think being able to wrap all of this up with the ability to see everything that's taking place in your warehouse, it fundamentally changes the service level you can bring to your customer and, frankly, the expectations that you have of your team, because now you can actually coach down to the specific behavior or activity on how those results occur.
And Nick, this is a specific to OneTrack question, but it goes in line with what you're just talking about. And someone from the audience just asked, how does OneTrack help with actually taking pictures of a loading process?
Oh, that's a great question. So there's so many facets of what we do, but for this particular question, we can integrate or we can receive data from your WMS, a simple one-way data push that once that operator goes into the loading sequence, it initiates the cameras to start recording. So from the moment that first pallet is scanned and they're taking it onto the truck to the moment those doors close and that load is complete, OneTrack is capturing all of that footage. And then it's actually searchable by load number, by LPN, to ensure that not only do you have the data, but that you can access it and actually make decisions with it and use it in a meaningful way.
Perfect. And Ryan, I guess taking a step back from the loading discussion, but when you think about visibility, and especially again, going back to the topic of world-class operations, what role do you think visibility plays for you as a leader, actually being able to see and have confidence across multiple warehouses that you can't physically be in and day out?
Well, visibility always helps. Data always helps. I think OneTrack has been absolutely amazing at giving us a significant improvement on all the data points that we measure, and back it up with a little bit of humbling story. But we track our safety metrics, we track hours per incident, cost per hour, cost per mile, and OSHA injury rate. There's several others. So once we implemented OneTrack, we started to see a large rise in the amount of incidents that were occurring, which is great because we're getting more data. And it's humbling when very frankly, when you realize all of these instances were happening and we didn't know it. And I say we, I mean myself and some of the management team, we didn't realize how many close calls and how many instances were going on that were there. I look at it, you got the picture of an iceberg and you have the iceberg out of the water, and that's what you see. And then you get all the stuff underneath that you don't see. And they either weren't reported, they were thought to be minor and weren't a big deal, or whatever it was. So that was eye-opening. And quite frankly, it was great education. Those are the things why we want to learn and understand how we get better. Overall, some of the metrics, the cost per incident and cost per hour weren't going up as much because we were eventually collecting those costs because we had to fix them. But we didn't realize how many were happening. So we got to address those. And then you get real-time information, you get accurate information, you get video footage, you're getting what I call factual data. It's not going back and asking, hey, what happened here? And they give you an interpretation or what they thought, or you have two different interpretations of what happened. When we talk about trucks on the road, everybody blamed our driver. Well, you have two different stories. When I got a video footage of what happened in the warehouse and the two forklifts and how close they were, if they actually collided, there's no argument on what happened. You're seeing it. So not only is that data great and there's more of it, but then you get real-time training of it. So when these things happen, you get to go out and address it and talk to people. How can we prevent this? What did we do wrong, or what can we do better? And to me, that's fantastic. And then the near misses, the bumps, the impacts, the aggressive turns, phone violations, chewing gum in the warehouse, distractions and goofing off. And we have all these different categories that we can track and address and help people get better. And like I said, it's not an attitude of how do we go out there and punish them for doing this, but share that information, talk about why it's important we don't do these things or we do things better. But then you go into how much is that saving us? If we have less accidents, we're picking up less cases that are damaged, we have less customer product damage, so the customers are happier. We have less equipment downtime because they're not getting banged up or hit. All of our rack positions are open. We have less rack positions that are hit, and we're waiting to replace the uprights or the crossbar, so we have better storage capacity. I mean, put a number to all that. It's really hard to get all that data, but I'm telling you, there's a lot of money saved. We're more productive, we're more efficient, we're more effective, and it's all helping the bottom line. And it's not directly showing that on our safety record. The safety record's getting better, but does those financial numbers come along with the safety record getting better? Wonderful stuff. But it starts with data visibility.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about the story of like everyone's blaming the over-the-road truck driver. And I think it's the old adage of like, well, I have a story and you have a story. Then in the middle, there's the truth somewhere, right? I think even when you're in an incident yourself, if I was driving a forklift and I hit a pole, I probably have a reason for why I think I hit that pole, but it's probably not the actual reason because I'm a little skewed. I don't think I did anything wrong. Of course, why would I do anything wrong? So I think it's important to have that data there. And then to your point, all the other cascading factors that come along with a safer building and more accountable employees and a better culture, it just turns into this really snowball effect of other things that you probably don't think about when you think about investing in a safety tool or in any sort of technology, all the different kind of cascade things that come along with that.
Right. You mentioned the shift in the feel in that building, how it's changed. And it takes me to a couple stories. Just one that I'll share with you is we have an organization that we work with, and they were experiencing an incredible number of injuries. Nothing catastrophic, right? Fortunately, but they were experiencing a number of injuries. And so we went into the top 4 locations that were experiencing injuries. And over the first year, they went from, I want to say they were averaging somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 30 incidents per location down to 0. And so sure, there is a little bit of a financial cost to that depending upon what those injuries might be, but the overall, just the feel from the operators, the associates there, that's a tangible feeling. We just have so many of those examples where you get in and you begin to fundamentally change just the overall behavior of the organization or the feel of that location and the feel that those associates have, the pride that they take now with understanding all of the different aspects that go along with it. It's just an incredible case. And certainly we're spending a lot of time talking about OneTrack, but there are other incredible technologies out there that do the same thing in different aspects of your business as well. So it's a really neat thing to be a part of.
But you're developing this positive momentum that
Yeah.
picks up and it keeps going. And momentum is a wonderful thing. As long as you keep it rolling,
That's right.
it has great effects.
That flywheel.
Right. Ryan, you talked a lot about being data driven. So what's next for states in terms of data driven operations? You're getting all kinds of data from OneTrack. You're probably getting all kinds of data from some of your other tools. You mentioned your WMS, your TMS, all those types of things. So what's next for states in terms of using that data to make improvements?
Yeah, well, the initial thing we're working on now is the connectivity between our WMS and OneTrack and kind of benchmarking each of the functions in the warehouse and productivity standards for those functions, loading, unloading, case picking, and then developing, alerts. So alerts that are telling us how many scans are we having, downtime or movement or lack of movement. It all will help trigger these productivity improvements, and we can understand who's performing at what level and work with those. Once again, we don't want to go punish them. I just want to make each operator out in the warehouse a little bit better. And if we got data that shows what levels there are and we can work with them to improve that, we're getting better. And these will be driving our financial numbers, improve our cases per hour out in the warehouse, which ultimately improves our bottom line and our profit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to ask both of you, just final thoughts. What advice would you give to other logistics leaders, whether it's taking that first step or taking that 100th step? What advice would you give to people? Nick, let's start with you, and then Ryan, you can round us out.
Yeah, I think as I look at or participate in a variety of discussions that are all influenced by these different aspects of logistics and in the supply chain, I think the thing that I would encourage when you're looking for a new piece of technology, it's really understanding that value, right? Be it a financial value return or just those intangibles that are very difficult to measure or to quantify in terms of behavior change. And as you think about some of intangible aspects of what some technology will bring to your organization, it's going to require a shift in the way and the approach to bringing new technology in. So I would encourage everyone to spend time in the value. The return on investment is incredibly important. Don't ever skip over that step, but also understand that intangible value of what will this do from a motivation perspective for operators, for the associates, for my operations. How will that ultimately begin to snowball that effect and drive further value, further financial returns for my organization? So that'd be my final thought.
Investment in technology, I think it has to be done in today's day and age, way more than it did 20 years ago. It's more and more important now. We look at the financial piece, the ROI, but I don't want to focus too much on that. If I can look at that and say I'm somewhere in the ballpark, right? Anywhere in the ballpark, I want to do it because I'm sure I'm going to get a whole bunch of other stuff out that will push it way beyond that financial side. And then if you add safety into that question on technology, to me, it's an absolute no-brainer because you need to be focused on safety, but that'll pay for itself. It's going to take care of your employees and keep your employees safe. So that's an easy decision to make. For us, that was OneTrack. I got word from another IWA member about you guys. I got to meet you at the conference, talk to you, and to me, it was all about how quick can we get rolling and get going.
We've enjoyed
Absolutely.
the partnership, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So one question that came in, and Nick, this is probably a little more geared to you, but Ryan, you might want to speak to it as well. But what is the actual AI part of the system? I think they understand the cameras part, but what's the AI part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So, in terms of how OneTrack approaches this, I think it's important when you think about training a computer to recognize specific behaviors. It's less about the person, but more about the activity or the actions that occur. And that's what we're training the computer vision to monitor for. And that ultimately helps to identify those key behaviors, things like not looking in the direction of travel or hands outside the equipment, hands off of the steering controls. That's another one. So it's not about the person, it's about the activities, the behaviors that they're engaging in that we've trained our system to recognize for and look for. Yes, you'll see those accidents or the things that require coaching that ultimately are reactive, but then it's stepping into this space of being proactive. And if you can address those things and coach operators and associates before those catastrophic events occur, that's a win across the organization. And what we strive for is we hope that our customers never, ever have any events to look at, right? Because that means everything is running perfectly. And how you get there is being able to review and monitor those things that lead to accidents and productivity alerts and quality events. All of those things add up.
And right from your perspective, what is the AI component done? Like, what is the draw of AI when it comes to logistics from a leader's perspective? What does that really mean when it comes to day-to-day operations?
Well, I think, you put up cameras all throughout the warehouse and it's great, but nobody has time to monitor and watch all those. So OneTrack is done is it's feeding us information that are areas that you want to know what's going on. And so these specific segments or these timeframes, these are what you want to watch and see and address. And our input on that as you go through and as our leaders are managing that is they're fine tuning that learning so that as we get those incidents, we know exactly what they are and there's stuff that we can go out and address and improve the operations on. It's displacing all that work and the system's doing all the work. We don't have to do anything. We just get a feedback says, here's something, go address this, right?
Think about it less as artificial intelligence and more about automated intelligence, because that's exactly right, Ryan. You take away that requirement to sit and monitor hundreds of screens or hundreds of cameras that are trying to monitor everything that's taking place in your building and automatically delivering those key points and events to you to make real-time decisions.
We had a couple of questions get sent in ahead of time from folks who had registered. And one is, what are one or two recommendations that you have on whether it's behaviors to look for that maybe you weren't expecting or behaviors and how your team has coached them to improve something? What are some things to look for?
I think employees can sometimes not want to report or not share if there's an accident or if they've damaged something or they've literally damaged a pallet or damaged a box of product or they've dropped a pallet. All of these things happen. Mistakes are made, and especially as you're learning and you're new to handling equipment or working in the warehouse, all of those things happen. You got to have that relationship of trust and have them share what's going on so that we can go out and help train them to be better, not go out and punish the person because they damaged a case. That happens. You got to have that environment though. But number two is these systems are out there. They're going to identify these things and they get you to go out and talk to the employees and talk about that, the near misses or cell phone usage, distractions. If we don't allow cell phones out in the warehouse, people out on forklifts talking on cell phones. It happens. It'll happen just about any warehouse you have. So these cameras will identify that so you can address it and talk about the safety issue. One distracted moment and they can severely hurt somebody or themselves.
As I think about that question, Evan, there's really two things that we see that happen quite often in buildings. Number one, without fail, our customers say, hey, we have a zero tolerance phone policy or a very limited phone policy. And on day one, they'll have hundreds of cell phone events. And it's just a natural thing that occurs. But I think the more important aspect of this is once you have the ability to coach your operators on cell phone usage specifically, in very specific instances, I think the neat thing is that falls off. It's the number one improvement that all of our customers see. They go from hundreds of cell phone events to zero in a matter of minutes. Essentially, we turn on these notifications, they start to receive the ability or have the ability to coach on them, and they go to zero virtually instantly. The second piece, when we talk about looking for behaviors, the second one that we see quite often is not looking in the direction of travel. And I think that's a really key thing for us to talk about because it's something that we all know. You never back your car up without looking or at least checking your backup screen, right? You would never just blindly back up your car. So the fact remains that it's no different. We need to make sure that we're teaching and coaching our operators and associates that, hey, we need to make sure we're checking our surroundings because it's very difficult to see a post. Sometimes you don't recognize or remember quite where you're at in the building, and that's okay. But being able to coach them on those specific behaviors is very important.